Hello, welcome to Lesson 2 in the Idler's Business for Bohemians course for creative entrepreneurs. In this lesson, we're going to look at the dreaded concept of the business plan. Now, one of my friends started a creative business. She makes and sells marshmallows. Now, I asked her about her business plan, and she said those two words strike terror into her heart. They are the opposite of buzzwords, which are perhaps snooze words or sigh words, as she said. And she's never actually written a business plan. Okay, that's fine. She's just kind of gone with the flow. But actually, I think it's a good idea, and I'll tell you what a business plan is and why you would ever bother to write one. Now, 20 years ago, when I started the Idler magazine, I was on the dole and I was sent on a enterprise course for Doleys in Portobello Road. And they told you to write a business plan. And you had to write a business plan if you wanted to get your £40 a week from the enterprise allowance scheme, as it then was. But we didn't know what to do. We were 23 years old. And to us, the business plan told you to look into the future and predict what kind of sales you were going to make and how this was going to work. I remember discussing this with my friends on the course and thinking, this is absurd. How could anybody look into the future and decide what's going to happen in the future? So we kind of basically used that as an excuse and we never sat down to write one. 20 years on, and when we set up our business, the Idler Academy, a shop and teaching venue and cafe in West London, I did actually sit down to write a business plan. And 5 years on from that, when I went out to get investment for our business, I absolutely had to write a business plan because the company who handled our investment, Crowdcube, demanded one, and so do all the investors. Now, what is a business plan? Well, it's a plan for your business. It tells other people what you want to do. It also tells other people who you are, what your experience is in this world, why you should be writing a business plan, why you should be running this business. It also tells people that you've investigated the world that you're about to enter, and that means the market. So, for example, if I wanted to start a book publishing company, then the bank or friends or customers or investors or anybody who might get involved with this business would probably want to know that I had some kind of a clue about what I was talking about. So I knew something about the world of publishing. Perhaps I'd worked at a publishing company. I'd worked at Bloomsbury or Penguin, had a senior role there and was now striking out on my own, or I'm an author, or I've worked in bookshops, or some kind of knowledge of the area. And the phrase that's used in business, the technical term for this, is domain knowledge. People expect and want you, whether it's a customer or investor or the bank, to have some kind of knowledge of the area that you're going to go into. That's one thing. They also want to see some graphs, and we're going to come back to spreadsheets in a later session. But they want to see some kind of evidence that you've thought through how you're going to find people to buy the thing it is that you're going to sell. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Well, look, I'm just a consultant, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm not going to be employing people. I don't need to write a business plan. I'm not going to be going out to get investment. I still think it's a good idea and a good thing to do, even if you keep each part of it fairly brief, because it helps you to think through why you're doing this, what you want to do, how you're going to earn money to live, and how you're going to go out there and get people to buy the thing that you sell, whether it's a painting or a service, or you're a plumber or a white van man, or whatever it happens to be, selling apples. Even the most bohemian operator needs to think about how they're going to bring money into their business, otherwise you won't have any money. And poverty, as I know from experience, is not fun at all. That's why I recommend that you sit down at some point and write a business plan. But don't be scared. you can break it down into little constituent components and parts. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you how to write each part of your business plan. And I base this stuff on reading books about business plans, reading lots of other business plans, which is a good idea, and showing it to other people. Before I go on to describing the basic elements of a business plan, I want to give you one practical tip. And that tip is simply to go on to a website like Crowdcube or Seedrs, and these are crowdfunding equity companies where entrepreneurs go to raise money and individual investors go to find interesting businesses to invest in. So you can sign up on one of these platforms as an investor without paying any money. You can then go through all the companies which are pitching for investment and read their business plans. And that's a great education. I mean, it's a great fun thing to do anyway, to see what people are up to, what they're doing, and all the great ideas they've got. But you can see some pretty professional business plans laid down there and read those, and they'll give you some guidance when it comes to writing your own. So stay with me now. What I'm going to do is talk you through the constituent parts of writing a business plan. Your first paragraph in the business plan is called the idea. And this is where you outline in simple terms what it is that you want to do. To get this, again, go for a long walk, think, lie on a sofa, go to bed, do nothing, and let the ideas swirl around in your mind. And at some point, sit down and put pen to paper or finger to keyboard and come up with a brief 100 to 200 word description, a kind of top line summary, if you like, of what it is that you want to do. Now, I'm going to read out the one that we did for The Idler. The Idler is a much-loved publishing and events brand with a mission to help people find fulfillment and freedom in everyday life. Early testing of paid-for online courses in philosophy and ukulele and so on has proved successful, and we plan to roll out an ambitious on-demand learning program in the arts, creative entrepreneurship, and practical skills. So that was a sort of brief summary for potential investors of what I want to do with The Idler, what our next plan was. We're a publishing and events company, and we're planning to launch a new series of online courses. Now, the conventional advice that you get in business is that you are there to solve a problem. So what people tell you is that you should present a problem. There's a problem, people are working too hard. And the solution is that they should read The Idler magazine. So that's a kind of simple way of stating your business case. And business people are very familiar with that idea. So you might as well just go along with it. So you've detected what they used to call a gap in the market, some kind of issue or problem, and you're going to solve it with your business or service. And that's the basis of your idea. So think about that when you're putting together paragraph 1 in your business plan, the idea. Now, paragraph 2 in your business plan should be called the market. Now, what's the market? Well, the market is the people who you think are going to buy the thing it is that you do or sell. Now, think about different sorts of businesses. Take, for example, Damien Hirst. He's a massive artist and sells his work for huge sums to very rich people. He has a very small, rich market, but he knows where it is. It's the Sultan of Qatar. It's an art gallery. It's someone very, very rich. So he and his crew will go to those people and get friendly with them, talk to them. Now, it's very different if you're Tesco, because your market is absolutely vast. You're talking to pretty much everybody. So you're advertising on television to a mass market. In the case of The Idler, we're trying to find people who are perhaps slightly dissatisfied. They're at a crossroads in their lives. They'd like to quit their job or do something more interesting with their leisure time. So we need to think about where those people are and how to find them. In our case, I think we've sort of boiled it down to young people who are mid-20s, perhaps a bit disappointed by the working world. They're looking for something extra and something more fulfilling. We also look at an older group, the sort of 50-somethings who are sort of fed up with working, they've had enough of it. They also want to find a bit more fulfillment and meaning in their lives. And we also are looking at creative entrepreneurs, so that the creative people who want to make a living out of what they love to do. And that could be young mothers or young fathers, and they are around. We need to try to find them. So that's what your market is. Who are the people who might be buying what it is you want to do, and where are they? And so you need to go out and find those people. And how do you find them? That comes later in advertising and marketing. But so whether you're a piano teacher, a permaculture gardener, a osteopath, you have a market. There are some people out there who you need to find. So you need to spend some time thinking about who those people are and write it down. And that's paragraph 2 of your business plan, the market. Now, paragraph 3 of your business plan should be called the team. Again, this idea of the team might put you off. You might not like that word. It's a business word, really. Meet the team. Here's my team. But it's actually quite a nice word, I think. It's a team of people that you get together, you work with. So what I want you to think about now in this paragraph, the team, is who you are going to be working with. Now, you might say, well, I'm a sole trader, meaning, I'm just getting money in. I'm not going to start a limited company or a partnership or anything complicated like that. And I'm just working on my own. But everybody does work with other people at some point. You might have a designer who's helping you, or someone to bounce ideas off, a printer, So there's going to be a little group of people around you. So what you need to do, and what I'd like you to actually do at the end of this lesson, is write a short paragraph of something like 200 words about each member of your team. So you might say, John Lennon, why he's an appropriate person to be a member of the Beatles, what he's done before. Paul McCartney, what sort of personality traits he has, what he'll bring to it. Ringo Starr, clearly he's the drummer, they need a drummer in the band, and so on. So how does the group of people who you've assembled come together to complement each other's skills to create this business you want to make, and inspire confidence in the people who are going to buy the service or the thing that you're making, and also the people who are going to invest in it or lend you money. The 4th paragraph of your business plan, in my view, should be called your wise men or your committee. So what I advise everybody to do, even if you're a sole trader, is to find at least 1 or 2 people who have done what you are doing more or less successfully and can advise you on the pitfalls and the pleasures and the things to avoid, the mistakes that they've made. So in our case, I've got 4 or 5 friends, people I know, who have worked in similar businesses, and I go to them to ask advice periodically. Now, you could either hold a monthly committee meeting with 2 or 3 people, detain them for an hour, take them out for lunch, or you can go and see them on your own in their time, or just chat to them on the phone. But I think it's very important that you have 3 or 4 people in the industry that you're working in or want to work in who are well recognised, perhaps even by the wider public, and can do those 2 things of 1, giving you actual practical advice on what you're doing, and you can go to them and go, look, this is not working, and they go, well, forget that, don't do that anymore, try something else. But also to put these people down, and I did this on our business plan, on your business plan, to show other people that there are some, quite serious players in your world who are advising you, because again, that's going to give a lot of confidence. When you're thinking about who to choose to ask to be your mentors, you might think, well, I don't know anybody high up in my industry. In that case, go to people who you already know, who know you, and they might know somebody, or you could ask them to be your first advisor, and they might lead you on to somewhere. Now, one of our first advisors when we launched our own shop was my first ever boss. When I was 21, I worked at Rough Trade Record Shop for a man called Nigel. Rough Trade are great retail heroes. I didn't know them before I started working there. I just applied for a job and got it, and kept in touch. So 20 years later, when I was opening my own shop, I asked Nigel to come and pop in and to give me a bit of advice every now and then. And that was really helpful. So think through everybody you know. If you don't know anybody at all in the business that you want to go into, you should probably spend some time working in that business and get to know some people. And just go and talk to people. Be bold, send emails, introduce yourself, and get yourself out there. And you will eventually find a really good committee of mentors. And people love helping people on the same path that they've been on to. And everybody really respects someone who goes out on their own. And I discovered this when I started the Idler magazine. You know, it was a fanzine. I was just doing it in my spare time in the evenings. But the amount of help that poured in, unpaid help from friends, was absolutely fantastic. And if you do start to set up your own stall in the marketplace, people will come to you a bit. You'll certainly get respect from your immediate sort of peer group. So be confident and be bold. Get out there and appoint a committee of advisors. The next paragraph in your business plan should be called the competition. Now, you might have got into being a bohemian business person because you have a sort of distaste for dirty mammon and the competitive work ethic and that sort of thing. So you don't really like the idea of having competition. You might think, well, I don't have any competition. I just want to be sort of friends with everybody. But everybody has some kind of competition in whatever you do. Clearly, pop groups, bands have competition. The Beatles and the Stones. It doesn't mean you're not doing your own thing, but there are other people in your world who are competing for customers, for people who are going to buy your stuff. The Idler magazine, in a sense, doesn't have exact competition because we're quite an unusual magazine. But I can look at other small magazines in our sector. I go to magazine shops regularly. I check out what magazines are coming out. I read other magazines. I read small magazines. I read big magazines. I follow the circulation of Private Eye, of The Spectator, of Granter magazine. So I sort of immerse myself into that world. When it comes to teaching, with online courses, I look at sites like Creative Live and Skillshare.com and Udemy. And again, trying to immerse myself into that world and figure out what other people are doing, look at what courses they're offering, look at the prices they're charging. When we opened a bookshop, I looked at other bookshops and tried to see how they operated. So whatever you're doing, you're entering into a world where there are other people doing similar things who might be your competition. And you need to show yourself, people who might be working for you, or with you, or the bank, or the investor, or the customer, that you kind of check them out. You know what they're up to. It's called competitive monitoring. So write out a list of other people who are working in a similar area to you. Try to figure out a little bit about how they're doing. I mean, actually, you can look companies up on Companies House and look at their profits and their turnover and that kind of thing. You can also actually use Facebook to research other companies. You can look at their own websites. You can look at sort of who their customers are on things like Facebook and just research the area that you're going to go into. So that's what the competition means. Even if your paragraph is only short, even if it's only 100 words, at least you've kind of thought through it. I think our business plan section on the competition was about a page. So you want to sort of keep it sort of fairly concise, not too wordy, but also to show that you sort of thought through all this stuff. And by the way, at the end of this segment, I'm going to give you a link and you're going to be able to read the Idler's business plan, the business plan that got us 150 grand through crowdfunding, to see how we did it, to help you to create your own. The next paragraph in your business plan should be called routes to market. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, that means the channel via which you're going to sell the things that you sell. When we ran the Idle Academy, we had a shop. That's a route to market. A website is a route to market. Selling your stuff on Etsy or Amazon is a route to the market. So it's how you're going to sort of find the people, how they're going to come to you. We sell books and subscriptions at festivals. That's a route to market. Another route to market for the Idle magazine might be inserting a flyer into another magazine, advertising subscriptions to our magazine. That's a route to the market. Think through what your routes to market might be. Write them down in 200 to 300 words. Our next paragraph in our business plan is called the brand. Now, people often apologize for using the word brand because it sounds like you're a Soho advertising executive. And it sounds a little sort of technical, even sort of business bullshit. I don't particularly mind it. You know, the Idler has a brand. We have a name. We have a logo, which is a snail. The Beatles was a brand. They actually changed their logo with every album, more or less. But it's still a brand, and it's in their case, it's backed up by photographs of the Beatles and also stuff they said in interviews. And a whole attitude to life is summed up. Humour, the cynicism of Lennon, the cheerfulness of McCartney, or whatever it might be. And that's what a brand is. It's a kind of personality that your business has. And in the same way, you know, a band can have a personality which is kind of the sum of its constituent parts, but is different from each of them individually. So a business can have its own personality. You only have to think about Apple. You know, it's got an indefinable personality that is a result of all the work they've done on their brand and pushing it over to us. It's an Apple. It's simple. It's very kind of stylishly, elegantly done. Actually, it's based on the Beatles, wasn't it? Because they had a company called Apple rather brilliantly. So think about what your brand is, what your message is. And this goes from if you're a blacksmith or a purveyor of washing up liquid. A friend of ours is a blacksmith called Alex. His brand is called Forge Kitchenware, and he's got a really gorgeous logo and a lovely design. In our case, what we did was go to friends who were graphic designers or are graphic designers and artists and illustrators and ask them to help to create us a brand and a brand logo. You also might think through a few adjectives that describe what you're all about. And this is a standard business trick, a business tool. So take your brand, in our case the Idler, and write down a few personality traits. Is it eccentric, quirky, intelligent, bohemian, witty, risk-taking, or whatever? And if you define the personality of the business that you're creating, it'll help you to communicate that business. Now, to me, you know, a brand is a communication of an idea. And that's why you don't need to be cynical about it. So even if you're a very small business or a one-person thing, it helps to have a personality because people buy into businesses that have some kind of an attitude that suits them. You might not like it personally. I can think of two businesses with very strong personalities, and they are Vice, the magazine and website and so on, and Brewdog, the beer brewing and bar company. Now, they both have these sort of quite aggressive brand personalities. People buy into that. People like it. Another example might be Innocent Smoothies, which often uses a lot of humour and gags in its marketing. People sort of buy into that. They buy into a kind of vibe. So think about the vibe is what the vibe is that you want to get across. What you're going to look like, what your colours are even. In the Idler, we chose red and black because they're the sort of anarchist colours, classically. And so that's our colours. Barclays Bank is blue, whatever, you know. I mean, big banks like Barclays spend a lot of money like researching colour and logos and stuff like that. You haven't got any money, but it's still really good fun, I think, to come up with a logo, a colour, some kind of identity for who you are. The context. Now, this is rather a technical area, and you would do well to read other business plans which talk about the context. It's to do with the sort of regulations and laws that are governing your industry, because they often change. So, for example, if you're into book selling, you need to look at the rules around book selling, discounting, what's going on in that world, what the sort of global trends are. And that might even be related to currency values, taxation laws in different countries. This might relate to things like taxation laws in different countries. If you're going to be selling ebooks in France, you need to check out the laws governing the sale of ebooks in France. Do you have to pay VAT? What are the VAT rates? So in any area you're going into, there's a set of rules and regulations on a global level and on a national level, which are constantly changing. You need to do some research into showing that you've looked at the wider context for your business and the way trends are moving. Next, we need to talk about the financials. And this is probably the scariest bit of your whole business plan, because you have to put some spreadsheets in there. And you'll have to put in something called a P&L. Now that means profit and loss. And what you're doing with a P&L is forecasting how many books or whatever it is you're going to sell, and drawing up against that the cost of selling those things. There are two kinds of costs. There's direct costs, which in the case of books means the cost of the book itself. So if I sell a book for £10 and the book has cost me £5, then £5 is a direct cost. There's also what are called overheads or indirect costs, and those are things like wages and cost of renting an office. They're the things that you have to pay even if you don't sell a single loaf of bread or book or online course or Cornish pasty or whatever it is. You know, if it's Cornish pasties, the direct cost is the cost of the meat inside the pasties, and the cost of buying the flour and so on. The indirect cost is the cost of the chef who's made those pasties, and the cost of renting the concession at Paddington Station where you sell those pasties. You could pay a chef and rent the shop and not sell a single pasty, and that's your overheads. The direct costs are the cost of actually making those pasties. That's just an introduction to it. I'm not claiming to be giving you an MBA here. You'll need to go and do more work on finding out what all these concepts mean. And in fact, later in this course, we'll be talking a little more in detail about spreadsheets. But that's to give you an idea. And what it's to show is like, am I going to be turning over £50,000, £20,000, £1 million a year? What's the cost of creating those sales? And how much profit is there going to be at the end of it? That's a brief introduction to the idea of what a P&L actually is. There's another spreadsheet that you ought to put into your financial section of your business plan, and that's called cash flow forecast. That's a slightly different thing. That's to do with how much cash is going to be coming in and out of your business each month. And when you talk to real top business people, they all say cash flow is really important. If there's actually some money in the bank account to pay your bills. That's a slightly different thing from working out whether you're profitable at the end of the year. Because you might make a sale in January, do the work, and only get paid in April. So the task with cash flow is to make sure that you get paid as close to doing the work as possible, so that you're not doing a lot of work and having no money in the bank. Because if that happens, if your cash flow lags behind, you haven't got enough cash in the bank account, and someone comes to you for their bills and you can't pay it, you could go bankrupt and everything could flop. And while on paper your business seems to be doing fine because you're working and you're sending invoices out, because you haven't actually been paid, perhaps a big company hasn't paid you and they're 6 months late, you can't meet your bills, you can't meet your staff bills, you can't pay your landlord, and the whole thing goes kaput. So you need to do a cash flow forecast to work out and to show to yourself and to other people who may be interested in your business that that's not going to happen. There's going to be enough cash to cover your everyday, monthly and weekly expenses. I've given you the basic building blocks of a business plan. They do vary. You don't have to follow that precise structure, and there are other structures, and as in everything else, people argue about it. There's no one fixed way of doing these things, and I don't want to be dogmatic about it either. But I've given you a reasonable idea of how to structure a business plan. So what I'd like you to do now is to go away and actually do that. Don't be intimidated. Just keep each bit short. Do 100 or 200, 300 words. The worst thing actually is a really, really long business plan. And it's a common mistake in businesses to produce a kind of a book. No one's going to read it. No one's interested. It's better to kind of distill the essence of what you want to do. And that also makes it easier for you to do now, because you're not being asked to write a novel or a thesis or a doctoral dissertation. You're just being asked to think through and then write down different parts of your business. Basically, what is it? You know, how is it going to make money? Where's it going to go? How's it going to help people? And so on. So please now go off again, go for a long walk, lie down, do a lot of thinking, and then sit down, and over the next week or two, write down each of the paragraphs which I've explained to you before. Now, the final one, the financials, is a little more tricky. We'll be coming on to a spreadsheet lesson later in this course.